In this episode of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the season that was and the season that's upcoming for Alex Ovechkin. We'll talk about all of that and more next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, and I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check that out. And when you're on YouTube, make sure and smash that subscribe button on top. That way you will know when the new videos are available. My name is Dan Holmi. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this edition, that is what we're going to talk about. I don't want to say this is the full season in review. This is only July, but I'm going to talk about some of the highlights of Alex Ovechkin over this past season. You know, you take a look at some of the more elite players in professional sports. You take a look at Brady. You take a look at Ovechkin. And generally speaking, with these players, they get older and they get slower. But, you know, some of these players age like a fine wine. You take a look at Ovechkin, you know, he's age 36 and he's still humming right along. If you take a look at Ovechkin's stats from this past season, in 77 games played, he had 50 goals. And to be scoring goals at such a clip is quite impressive. Just kind of taking a look back over his stat sheet, or the back of his hockey card, if you will. You take a look at the 05-06 season, his first season in the league. In 81 games played, he had 52 goals. Then you scroll down to 07-08, 65 goals. The 08-09, 56. The 9-10 season, 50. And then the 13-14, 51 goals. The 14-15 season, 53 goals. The 15-16 season, 50 goals. And then, of course, 18-19, 51 goals. And the 21-22 season, wow, that is a mouthful. Those are a lot of 50-goal seasons for the Great One. I'm calling him the Great One. I know it's Wayne Gretzky, but get over it. Alex Ovechkin will be considered the Great One, the Great Eight, when it is all said and done. And just taking a look at, his body of work, you take a look at him, and there were some people that kind of doubted him. If you take a look at, his body of work and you take a look at it, and you can see that, of course, there were a lot of 50-goal seasons that I mentioned there. But there were somewhat off seasons here and there. And, the funny thing is about the media is they will turn on you on a moment's notice. It was a few years ago where he wasn't performing quite on the same clip that he was in other seasons, and the media is always quick to jump on him. You take a look at the 16-17 season, which was 33 goals, and I know there's shortened seasons and there was lockouts and all that kind of thing, but I just remember people talking about him, even when he had an off game or a few off games, that, oh my God, Ovechkin, Father Time has finally caught up to him, but not the case for Alex Ovechkin. If you take a look at him, 50 goals by 36-year-old, is pretty unprecedented. When the peak scoring age is a decade younger than Alex is now, 50 goals at age 36 is the biggest total ever by someone older than 35. And I've said this throughout the season, is that if you're a Caps fan or an NHL fan in general, just kind of remember where you are right now, that you're watching one of the greatest, if not the greatest goal scorer when it's all said and done, Alex Ovechkin, and it's happening in your lifetime. Sometimes, the younger fans, they look at Gretzky and they're like, yeah, well, I wasn't alive when he was big. Or, you take a look at Gordie Howe or some of these elite goal scorers, but if you're alive right now and you can see Alex Ovechkin, just kind of glory in that, because I think it's something, that kind of gets lost. If you're a fan, that you're like, well, of course he's doing Alex Ovechkin things. It's not so common all the time for players to do that. So, just really kind of soaking it all in, if you will, about the great career that Alex Ovechkin has and what is ahead. If you take a look at it, he continues to train hard. He also had that game where he scored a goal, the soccer game, and then he played well in that Alex final game. So just taking a look at Alex Ovechkin, things continue to be in the upward trajectory, shall we say. If you were banking on the 21-22 season being the season where age catches up with Ovechkin, you were wrong, but that's not to say Ovechkin is invincible. He suffered a significant shoulder injury late in the season that cost him a few games and hampered him in the playoffs, and I don't even know what to make of that magic pill comment, though that's far from the most baffling statements from Ovechkin this season. I'll leave the discussion for the comments, and this is in RMNB. They're talking about it. Russian machine never breaks. Let's put it all aside. What they're talking about is the great one. The great eight. They're talking about Alex Ovechkin, and Russian machine never breaks, because generally, if you take a look at Alex Ovechkin historically, he's played through injury. He's played through a separated shoulder and all sorts of things. So by and large, Alex Ovechkin is the Russian machine that never breaks. And, that's what I'm saying. He's 36 years old. But don't tell that to him. He's keep going on, and he's at a great rate. And I just kind of look for the bigger things to come here. Generally, I don't worry about Ovechkin as long as he's attempting around 20 shots per hour, which is like top 5 in the league. And I'm not ready to say this season's apparent drop-off is something we can attribute to age decay. Ovechkin's lines with Kuznetsov didn't really control play virtually, even at a 50.1%. So the fractional decline may have more to do with missing a reliable play-driving winger on the other side of the ice. Either way, this is just a canary in the coal mine situation, poking around at the chicken innards to see if Ovechkin's goal scoring is nearing an end. For now, it's certainly not the case after all. Alex Ovechkin scored 50 goals this season. And, that's what I'm talking about, is they're talking about, he's getting older and how long can this continue? And these are a lot of the same comments that I hear when we're talking about Tom Brady, is how long can he continue to play at such a high level? And, he's doing great things in football as well. If you can't tell, I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, so you'll have to bear with me with the references there. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, a father time is coming for us all, of course. But, that's not to say that Ovechkin isn't just going to continue to keep amassing 50-goal seasons. Does it have to happen at some point? Sure. But we don't need to worry about that right now. What we need to think about is that he still is scoring 50 goals a season. And as of right now, he is slated to be starting this next season. You take a look at Nick Backstrom and Tom Wilson. They're kind of in a rough spot not having both of them on the ice. But, rest assured, the Capitals always play better when Alex Ovechkin is on the ice. And as of right now, he will be on the ice for Game 1. So after the break here, we will continue to talk about Alex Ovechkin, his past season, and what's ahead. But first, betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And betonline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, welcome back to this edition of Locked On Capitals as we continue to talk about Alex Ovechkin and the kind of crazy good season that he had this past season. I think that things are, swinging up. Everything looks for Alex Ovechkin to continue to keep breaking records. So taking a look at some of Alex Ovechkin's milestones at the start of the 21-22 season, Ovechkin scored his 730th career goal, which had him ranked 6th on the NHL's all-time list, first among active NHL players, and most by any player in the Washington Capitals history. During the season, he passed Marcel Dionne, Brett Hull, and Jaromir Jagr on the all-time list. He currently ranks 3rd on the NHL's all-time list. Going into the 21-22 season, Ovechkin had recorded 1,320 total goals in his NHL career. He now has 1,410 points, which ranks 20th on the all-time list. He passed several NHL greats in career points, including Guy Lafleur, Brendan Shanahan, Johnny Boyk, Mike Modano, Brett Hull, and Yari Curry. He also reached 1,400 points plateau as well. So just that was starting off the 21-22 season. Can you imagine what's going to be ahead for the 22-23 season? Ovechkin is the first in the NHL points in Capitals franchise history and second among active players in the league, only behind Joe Thornton. Heading into the 21-22 season, Ovechkin had recorded 590 assists. He now has 630 assists, which ranks second in franchise history, 9th among active players, and 82nd on the all-time list. Before the 21-22 season, Ovechkin had played 1,197 games, the most in the history of the Capitals franchise. He has now played in 1,274 games, which ranks 6th among active players, 4th among active forwards, 3rd among Russian-born players, and 1st among active Russians. Going into the 21-22 season, Ovechkin had scored 116 game-winning goals. He now has 121 game-winning goals. Think about that, 121 game-winning goals. Just take a gander and think about that, or take a moment to think about that. How many of those games would the Washington Capitals have lost if Alex Ovechkin wasn't playing? Now, you could say, well, maybe another guy would have scored a goal, and you could say that if that was a lower number, but 121 game-winning goals. Let that sink in for a minute. That is quite a stat, which he is tied for on the all-time list with Gordie Howe in first among active players. When the 21-22 season started, Ovechkin scored 269 career power play goals. Just think about that as well, which has him second on the all-time list. He has now scored 285 power play goals, which ranks first on the NHL all-time list. He passed Dave Andreychuk with 274, the former all-time leader, on 12/31/21. And that's what I'm talking about. Just really let that sink in. Sometimes you're in a situation and you can't appreciate it until it passes you by. This is one of those situations. And I'm telling you, if you're a Capitals fan, if you're an NHL fan in general, just really soak that in. And, you can put aside differences that I'm a Capitals fan. I'm not a Capitals fan. I don't like Alex Ovechkin for this or that or the other thing. It's all nonsense. You are witnessing history on ice. And, you could talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins. Is Crosby going to catch him? Not a chance. You take a look at some of the other younger guys, maybe McDavid at some point, but ultimately, I don't think that, anyone is going to catch Alex Ovechkin for some time. I think that he is inevitably going to catch Wayne Gretzky, but, it's going to take some time. There are so many intangibles and so many outliers there. Can he stay healthy? Those are the things that could derail his goal of being the all-time goal scorer. But, luckily for him, he's built really strong. So, generally he doesn't get hurt too often. Of course, you could point at Tom Wilson and go, how about Tom Wilson? Yeah, but, to be honest with you, Tom Wilson and Alex Ovechkin play two different styles of games. If you take a look at Tom Wilson, that is how Alex Ovechkin played years and years ago. Kind of that reckless behavior. Like I talked about Svechnikov. When is the last time Alex Ovechkin dropped the gloves? It was against Svechnikov in 2019. So it has been some time. So, if you could learn any lesson there, is you got to play on the edge. You got to play a big game, but you don't want to get to the point where you're playing such a big game that you're risking injury to yourself. I know that Alex Ovechkin, he's going for that all-time goal scoring lead, and that's important to him. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he is the captain of the Washington Capitals, and his job is to help the Washington Capitals win games by goal scoring and his leadership. They don't just slap that C emblem on anyone's jersey. He earned his stripes and his spot to be the captain of the Washington Capitals. And I think that's something that he wears with pride, because you got to think when he signed his last contract that there were a lot of other teams in the NHL that probably offered him the king's ransom. And you want to know something there to the Washington Capitals, and that speaks volumes of Alex. They're willing to stay on a Washington Capitals team that had only won one Stanley Cup in their history. He could have easily gone to the Rangers, or he could have gone to the Penguins, or he could have gone to any one of the other teams in the NHL that has a better record of winning Stanley Cups. But he chose to stay with the Washington Capitals, a place that the team that drafted him and kind of foisted and hoisted him up. Let's face it, Alex Ovechkin turned around hockey in DC. Before Alex Ovechkin was playing for the Washington Capitals, they aren't the team of today. If you're a younger person, you don't realize that. But before Ovechkin was on the team, they weren't, this top tier team. They were an okay team, sometimes a poor team, to be honest. But Alex Ovechkin revolutionized hockey in Washington, D.C., and that should never go unnoticed to Washington Capitals fans out there. Despite, a first-round exit and a bad goalie and whatever you want to talk about, let's set all of that aside for this moment. And think about that. When you watch Alex Ovechkin put his skates on every night, laces them up, and heads out there, that you are watching history right before your eyes. You don't have to look at some archival footage. You are witnessing history when the Great Eight takes the night. And, like I say, let that not fall on deaf ears. Really let that soak in. Those people that saw Gretzky, the same thing. They probably at the time didn't realize what a great accomplishment that was, but really let that soak in and just understand the gravity of the situation and what a great hockey player Alex Ovechkin is. All right, so after the break here, we will continue to talk about the Great Eight, Alex Ovechkin. But first, all right, welcome back to this edition of Locked On Capitals. In this episode, we are concentrating on Alex Ovechkin. Just as I'm rolling down these stats here, just really sit amazed and watch this amazed as we witness Alex Ovechkin. When the 21-22 season started, Ovechkin had recorded 149 multiple games. He now has 158 multiple goal games, which is tied for second place on the all-time list with Brett Hull. In the process, he passed Mario Lemieux on the all-time list. He remains first all-time list for all-time goals scored by European-born player. Before the 21-22 season, Ovechkin had 27 career hat tricks. Again, just let that soak in a little bit. Ovechkin had 27 career hat tricks, which ranked 8th place on the all-time list. He had a hat trick on November 26, 2021, is now tied for 6th place on the all-time list with Marcel Dionne and Bobby Hull. He is the oldest player in Capitals franchise history to get a hat trick. Again, let this not fall on deaf ears, Capitals fans. Despite any play on the ice, just if you want to take a silver lining of anything, say the Capitals for some reason are horrible next year, if you get to see Alex Ovechkin on ice doing Alex Ovechkin things, consider yourself lucky as far as I'm concerned. Enough to see him get, I want to say 2 or 3 hat tricks. I saw him, and it was twice in Minnesota, playing the Minnesota Wild, and then one time when I was in DC on my 40th birthday. It was against the Kings. I want to say that he got one as well. And I did the crazy thing. I took my hat off and I threw it onto the ice. It's kind of a silly tradition, isn't it, really? I know it's a bit of terms of respect or whatever for the guy, but, ultimately after the fact, I'm like, I lost like a $30 hat there. In any case, I was able to witness the greatness that is Alex Ovechkin and what he has accomplished, getting those hat tricks. And it's a truly magical moment, especially witnessing it in Washington, in the home stadium when, the siren is going and everyone's going nuts. It's a really special moment. I got to say, it's pretty cool also when I saw it happen in Minnesota, where it was deathly quiet everywhere around the arena there. But still, nonetheless, it was a great moment. And I treasure those. And I think back on those memories fondly. I know that I was also in Washington when he won an award. It was a goal total. I don't remember the exact goal total. It was, 5 years ago. So whatever that was 5 years ago. And it was a special ceremony on ice. Wife and kids out there. And I just happened to be lucky to be there on my birthday and witness it. And, so I don't get a chance to go to DC and to Washington, DC and see a lot of the games. So for me to see that was really special. And those are things that I'll always remember is being able to see Ovechkin doing this. But also, if, when I was in Minnesota, what's cool about it too is that before the game, you can go right next to the ice and you can watch them, and it's kind of cool. They're just right on the other side of the glass. I remember the first time that happened, I thought to myself, this is so surreal. I'm used to watching these guys on television. And there's Ovechkin right on the other side of the glass. There's Tom Wilson and Kuznetsov and Backstrom and Holtby at the time. And it's kind of hard not to get carried away with like, oh my God, this is so cool. But in any event, it was a really cool moment. And like I say, that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to keep that in the front of my mind when I watch Alex Ovechkin play, is that we are, in fact, watching history. This season, Ovechkin scored 370 goals on the road. He now has scored 306 goals on the road, which ranks second on the all-time list. Before the 21-22 season, Ovechkin scored 360 goals at home. He now has 384 goals at home and ranks 8th on the all-time list. Ovechkin scored 16 power play goals during the 21-22 season, which was the 12th season that he scored at least 15 power play goals. No other player has accomplished this feat for more than 8 seasons. Ovechkin scored 50 goals during the 21-22 season, which was the most goals scored by a player 36 or older of all time. Timo Solani formerly held that record with 48 goals at 36. And, I hate to keep belaboring the point, but just a really amazing thing that we're able to witness that. Before the 21-22 season, Ovechkin had scored 370 goals. And, that's what I'm talking about, is just, it's hard to soak in all of those stats individually. So when I'm pouring over them quickly, it's even a little bit more difficult. By scoring 50 goals during the 21-22 season, that was the 16th season for Ovechkin to score 30 or more goals. Second most in NHL history, only behind Mike Gartner. It was the 12th season for him to score at least 40 goals, which tied him with Wayne Gretzky for the most in NHL history. It was the 9th season for him to score at least 50 goals, which tied him with Mike Bossy and Wayne Gretzky for the most in NHL history. It was his 17th season of scoring 20 or more goals, and 17th consecutive season he's done that. And, that was just a great article that I had read there in Novacaps from a couple months ago, but they just broke down, and just like I say, just think about those statistics. It's mind-boggling, if you want me to be honest with you, of just the many great things that he has accomplished. And it's not just it's the intangible things. It is it's his leadership. It's not just always slamming home those goals and everything like that. It's just what his what does he mean to this team? It's also his leadership qualities, and that's what I'm saying. That's what you can't overlook, the many accomplishments that he's done for this team. So next on the list here, I to talk, and I'm going to pivot a little bit up from that, and I'm going to talk greatest moments in Ovechkin's careers. There's 8 of them here. Bleacher Report ranks them here. So if you guys can kind of remember back, when Ovechkin was a younger man, he was a bit more of a showboat. If you remember him during the All-Star game with his big fancy get-up on, I think he was dressed up as Elvis. So number 8 is the hot stick celebration after 50th goal of the 09 season. During the 08-09 season, Ovechkin led the NHL with 56 goals on his 50th. He ignited some controversy. Ovechkin ripped a wrister past Tampa Bay Lightning goalie Mike McKenna, then dropped his stick and pretended it was too hot to handle. The celebration drew the ire of players, coaches, and some members of the media, especially Canadian broadcaster Don Cherry. Get over it, Don Cherry. Have you ever seen your suit coats before? It's in their building. They're being beat 5-1, and you score on a rookie goalie. The once popular Cherry said, how do you think McKenna feels about this? In the 21 season, McKenna told the CBC he was embarrassed and wanted to slash Ovechkin's stick into the second zip code. But soon after, Ovechkin apologized and told McKenna he didn't mean to disrespect him. All's well that ends well. And you can hear him. I believe he's on Steve Cooley on the power play. A really knowledgeable guy. I'm always like it when he's on there. So number 7, the glass-breaking goal-scoring debut. Ovechkin wasted no time introducing himself to the NHL during his first ever shift. He hammered New York Rangers defender Radoslav Suchet into the boards. The massive hit broke a stanchion, which holds the glass surrounding the rink in place. It didn't expect it. He later told Men in Blazers, I was over there. I was young. When you have the strength in your body, I think you have to use it. Have to send a message, but that was merely the start. Midway through the third period, Ovechkin scored the game-winning goal in Washington's 3-2 victory. It was the first of 52 goals en route to the Calder Trophy as the league's Rookie of the Year. And just really great moments. Number 6, Hart Trophy clinches historic sweep. Ovechkin bossed the 2007-2008 season. As a result, his trophy case started to get a little crowded. Ovechkin scored a career-high 65 goals, which secured the Rocket Richard Trophy as the NHL's top goal scorer. Throw in 47 assists for 112 points, and Ovi earned the Art Ross Trophy given annually to the league's top point producer. Additionally, he earned MVP honors as voted by the players. Ovechkin had never landed any of those awards, so that alone was exciting enough, but he also became the first player to secure all 4 accolades in the same season. Wow. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It's just... Washington fans, let's be a little proud. Let's not be down in the dumps that they made a first-round exit. Are you kidding me? As you know, sometimes I need to look at stuff like this and just roll back the footage and take a look at these archival articles about Alex Ovechkin and just be mind blown all the time when we just keep rolling over his many, many accomplishments. Ovechkin nets 1,000th career point. In January 10, 2017, Ovechkin 1,000 career points and joined a relatively exclusive club of Ovechkin's first shift goal to reach the mark, notably this time in which is ace to get my 1,000th point at home, he said, and added a power play goal in the second period of Washington's 5-2 win. Number 4, Ovi becomes the all-time leading Russian goal scorer. You know, there's a lot of controversy about Russia. Let's just keep it to hockey here and look at the man and his body of work since the debut of Victor Necci during the 82-83 season. Reborn players have made a massive impact in the NHL. Prior to Ovi, legendary goal scorers included Slava Kozlov, Sergei Fedorov, and Alexander Malgalny, among several others. And in November 2015, Ovechkin ascended to number 1. He cleaned up a pass from Nick Backstrom for the 484th goal of the career, which set an NHL record for Russian-born players. Backstrom coincidentally assisted Fedorov when he passed him for the same achievement 7 years earlier. Though the Caps lost in Dallas on this particular night, Ovechkin added yet another distinction to his legacy. And the goal. So this is number 2 here. Whenever he ultimately hangs up the skates, the final milestone goal of Ovechkin's career was ascended in ranking of memorable moments. Perhaps it'll even be a replay of him passing Wayne Gretzky as the NHL's all-time leading scorer. If he scores a singular tally greater than the goal in his rookie season, however, we'll be completely shocked. And this came in front of the great one. And if you haven't seen this footage, just do yourself a favor. First of all, why haven't you seen this? Look it up on YouTube. It's when he scored. And just from that moment when I saw him, I can't even really explain it. As the Capitals held a 5-1 advantage in the January 2006 game against the coached Phoenix Coyotes, Ovechkin rushed into the offensive zone and sped a Phoenix defenseman Paul Mara stood up the rookie and shoved him onto, seemingly ending the threat. Somehow, though, Ovi contorted his body, twisted his arms, and from his back, unable to see the net, shuttled the puck beyond a sprawled Brian Boucher, the Phoenix goalie. It's not the greatest goal in NHL history. It's very close, though. And if you just take a look at that, I mean, man, I'm just watching that replay now as I'm watching and as I'm talking to you guys, you know, and it's almost it's crazy, you know. You think about some point that he's not going to be on this team, and it's quite something to think about. That, you know, there is the possibility, you know, that obviously one day he won't be on this team. So it is quite impressive. Number 1, Ovechkin finally lifts the cup. The first 8 seasons, 74 through 75, and the 81 to 82 season in franchise history were somewhat between disgusting and bad. Since, though, Washington has been consistently competitive team from the 82-83 to 03-04, the Capitals made the postseason 18 times in 22 years. They missed the playoffs in Ovechkin's first 2 seasons, then won 7 division titles, earned 9 postseason berths during the next 10 years. But the franchise had never won it all, and Ovechkin had never come close. The 97-98 team lost in the Stanley Cup, and Washington haven't reached the Eastern Conference Final in those 9 playoff trips with Ovechkin leading the roster. Finally, the drought ended in 17-18, and lets everyone remember where we were. We watched history unfold for the Washington Capitals. I was with my wife downstairs, and, it was a historic season. Just taking a look back on it, they had to make their way through Columbus, which was tough. They made it past Columbus. Guess what? Tampa's next. There's no way they're getting through Tampa. Even before they three-peated, they were a great team. Or not three-peated, but before they won multiple Stanley Cups there, they were going to three-peat. They were still a great team. And then when they finally made it past the Tampa, then, of course, they were going on to play the Golden Knights. And I'm thinking to myself, and it's hard to remain positive because I've seen things go poorly so many different times. But it happened. They won. My wife was next to me. We were watching it in a room downstairs, and I'll never forget it. And it just, when it happened, she's like, "See, I told you it was going to happen." And just looking back on it and recollecting it right now, it still boggles my mind. And I know it's only one Stanley Cup, but they were finally able to get that off their shoulders. Alex Ovechkin was finally to reach one of his biggest goals, which was winning a Stanley Cup. And just fond memories of Alex Ovechkin. And, you can almost get a little emotional talking about it, to be honest with you, because, I'm witnessing it. You're witnessing it. We're all witnessing this great moment in history. Let's let that soak in a little bit, Let's not let that glaze over us like, oh, big deal. Big deal. You may never see another Alex Ovechkin in your lifetime, buddy. That's what I'm talking about. So anyone that's dismissive of Alex Ovechkin and what he's accomplished, maybe they should listen to this podcast or go research it for yourself online, his many list of accomplishments. You are witnessing, probably when it's all said and done, the greatest hockey player of all time, at least the greatest goal scorer when it's all done. So just let that really sink in. And I've gone through this summer and I haven't touched on Alex Ovechkin yet, and I still may. I mean, we have some time before the start of next season and talk a little bit more about him, but just a great time to be a Caps fan. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute podcast on the NHL. So once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals. That was a lot of fun taking a little trip down memory lane. Talking about the great. I'll talk to you again next time.